It's a pleasure to discuss this topic with you. Today's topic will be on the place of the audiobooks in the promotion of children literature from Africa. And as you know, over the past few years, we have witnessed the generalization of audiobooks, and no literary genre is spared anymore, and the revolution is here. We may say it. So today we're going to discuss on this topic, and together we're going to say things to improve, to figure out opportunities, and then how to overcome obstacles in order to make children books accessible to all, especially in Africa. So my name is Delali Kpotufe. I am the program officer for Muna Kalati. I am in charge of children books. So you can see how much this topic is very important to me. And to talk on this topic, we receiving for you some important personalities, one from Ghana and another one from Togo here. But a quick list for our followers. If you have your video or camera on, please put it off in case you don't want your image to appear on our videos that we will post on social medias. Okay, thank you for your understanding. So allow me to introduce to you our today's panelist, Dadson, who is from Ghana. Truly, personally, I am inspired through her various activities, things that she's doing here across the net. And allow me to introduce her to you. She's a globally experienced IT businesswoman, passionate about digital transformation in the Africa publishing industry. And she has more than 25 years career in IT development services, delivery and content creation, working in Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and with the United Nations. That's a great job. This is environment program in Paris, and let's say many things that push us to invite you on this topic. Thank you very much for accepting to discuss with us on this topic. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Delali. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much. I'm so excited about sharing my passion for digital publishing.
That's great. Thank you. Let me precise that Mrs. Dadson is also the CEO of Audiobooks. Some are wondering, they don't know. Very soon, we'll surely know together, discover this institution, Audiobooks. And you are the founder of Audiobooks, and then you're doing many things in the domain of audiobooks. Some may say talking books. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, Mrs. Alma.
My pleasure.
Okay, thank you. We're receiving also one of my brothers, if I call him brother because he is from Togo here. His name is Renaud Dossavi. Renaud Dossavi is a poet, a writer. He writes many children books also, special books for the youth. And he has got many awards from the World Bank, national awards, and then international awards in the domain. He is also the General Secretary of Pen Togo Association. And we're receiving him today to have a discussion to analyze the topic. As he is in the domain of books, he will surely share with us his analysis on this topic. Mr. Renaud Dossavi, you are welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. Hello to everyone.
Thank you very much. It's true that your timetable is very tough. You're very busy. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation of Muna Kalati. So it has always been let's say something that we are used to at Muna Kalati here. Some are wondering what Muna Kalati is. Muna Kalati just refer to children books, and we are also engaged to promote writers, all people that intervene in the children book domain. And that's what we are doing for many, many years now. And when today we're receiving you, it is because our passion is to make the reading, the books, an interactive and funny activity for children. So it is a great joy for us to have you on this topic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Meanwhile, we're receiving the late comments, but I think we can continue waiting for them to join us later, if you don't mind. So, I'm wondering, some may be also asking some question. If we're talking about audiobook, some may say talking books. What is it really about? If Mr. Ayudo Savi can jump on that question for me, it will be a pleasure. What is really about when we're talking about audiobook?
Well, basically, an audiobook is a format of book that is read. Like it will be read on audio formats. So if children or anyone that are listening, if you have had the luck in your childhood that your parents will read stories to you, basically that's what an audiobook is. It's a book that is read maybe through a machine or through a human being, and then recorded and then put it available for you on maybe on CD, but maybe more commonly right now on internet. So basically that's what an audiobook, as the word stands for. It's a book that is on a audio form. So you can find various, right now, dozen, even a thousand or hundreds of thousands of books that are already been read and read in various versions that are available on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. That's true. Many books are available. We have many audiobooks now, and we are honored to have one of the specialists of the domain with us, Mrs. Amadason. Do you want to add something? We're talking about audiobooks. What are we really talking about? Say it like that, according to you.
Right. Because of bandwidth, when I'm not speaking, I will just shut off my camera just to keep, the internet. But Renaud is completely right. Audiobooks are recorded versions of books. So you rather listen to the book rather than reading. And you can have books that are abridged, which is a shorter version of the book, or you can have word for word audiobooks unabridged. Now it's in the past, they used to do shorter versions of books, but now it's very common to do a full version, a book, anything from 5 minutes up to 24 hours, 36-hour books.
That's great. And I do confirm that it is very great what you're doing, and audiobooks are now accessible. Let's say it's true that some ignore it, but I truly confirm that it is very interesting. But I'm just thinking about the kind of relationship you are having with your listeners. As for writers, paper books, we know that there is a kind of relationship, but if you can go forward and share with us some of the relationship that you share with your listeners, it will be also interesting to know that.
Okay, so maybe just a background for audiobooks. Audiobooks actually started way back in the 1930s, and they were actually commercially started to make reading accessible for blind people. And but the very, very first audiobook was devised by Thomas Edison. I don't know, the man who designed the phonograph. And so he did the very, very first recording of an audiobook, which was a very short 2-minute poem. Mary Had a Little Lamb. You might know that childhood poem. That was the very, very first audiobook. And then, of course, audiobooks on records, vinyl, came. And that was mostly for soldiers from World War I who came back from the war, injured, blind, and they couldn't listen to books. So with the experience of having a book read aloud, the person reading aloud has the opportunity to interpret the words of the writer in their own way. And so you almost like get, for me, I think readers tell me that they have a voice in their head. It's almost like a picture in your mind of the characters, of the scenes, of the setting. And so you rely on the narrator to bring the story to life. So if the narrator is a good storyteller, then you get a fantastic experience. If the narrator is not very good, you don't get a good experience. And this is actually one of the reasons why I started my African audiobook company, because when I started listening to audiobooks, and that actually was for my mother, who is a writer, and she went blind about a decade and a half ago, and she started listening to audiobooks. We could only get Western audiobooks in English, written by British people or narrated by Americans. And we weren't getting the experience of African books narrated by our own people in our own languages, in our own voices. And it makes a big difference. Some of the big name writers who've written and published their books in the US, they have their audiobooks done in the US, and they are read by readers in the US and the UK, but they can't really read and give us the authentic, they don't know the context, they don't know the languages, they don't know the scenes, so they don't give a good interpretation. And so it was very important for me to hear our own stories told by our own people with our own accents, and it's really exciting. Even Nigeria, Ghana, East Africa, Togo, Francophone, West Africa, different accents. And so it's just really interesting, and it's more authentic when you hear, even for example, French spoken. I lived in Cote d'Ivoire for many years. There's an accent for Cote d'Ivoirians speaking French, very different from Senegalese speaking French or Togolese. And you can have the variety of accents, the diversity of voices. It's just amazing and wonderful.
Incredible.
Yes.
Yeah, that's sure. But sometimes we just ask this question. We wonder who is who really in that audio. Is it the character? Is it the narrator? We wonder sometimes who is who, as listeners.
Well, that's a great question, really interesting. I've listened to books where the narrator interprets it very differently from the way I imagined it. And so when in my own audio production process, I usually make samples, audition samples for the author to listen to so that they can select, this is the voice that is interpreting more closely to what I think it should be. We give them a choice. The audiobook narration career is a new one. So at the moment, we're not very, we don't have a wide range of choices, but that's one of my passions. I'm hoping, within the next 5 years to really grow the business and the talent and the craft of audiobook narration and expose a lot more voices so that our authors can have more voices to choose from. Right now it's limited. We have in Audiobooks, we have about 10 people that we work with, but we are hoping to expand and looking for more and more readers from across the country.
Ah, that's sure. And surely you should expand because with the new technologies, there's no choice now. We are obliged to go there. But I would like to have the point of view of Mr. Ayi on this. Mr. Ayi, can you tell us, as a writer, what do you think about audiobooks? Have you experienced them already? How do you feel about
Absolutely.
it?
Absolutely. Actually, I think it's a fantastic technology. I have to say. I had mixed feelings with other books at the beginning because as a writer, you tend to be more focused on the written part of the technology of the literature.
Mm-hmm.
Of the written part of literature. There is a certain aesthetic, a peculiar aesthetic of having written literature that the audio parts can be a little bit disturbing. But I have to say, with the passing time and with the easiness with which you can absorb information through audiobooks, through reading literature, I became really fond of them. Actually, right now, with a hectic schedule and really tight, we have very little free time. So the only way you can keep up with some books is having them in audio form. So you maybe while I don't know, ironing or cleaning the room, having the audiobook playing in the background, and it's exceptionally effective. Personally, what I do is I would listen to the same book twice. So the first time to let it get in, and then the second time to let the information sink in. Especially if it's literature. If it's literature, you have to meditate. So that's what I do. And usually around 5 or maybe 10 hours, you are done with one book. If it's a big book. So I am right now really fond of audiobooks, and I think we must massively leverage on this new technology to promote much more of our material, not only for Africa but for the world. And the second aspect of it that's very interesting is when you combine it with the internet. If you imagine a platform where you can just catch the production, and we are in the TLDR generation. We are lazy. We don't want to read too much, but we are eager to listen. And that's actually that's even the podcast format. So I think we really must leverage on this new form of the technology to promote material. Actually, just to conclude, there is an aspect of it that is quite interesting for us Africans, which is that we somehow went from orality, from oral literature, something that is very pervasive in Africa. We went from the literal writing form, which I consider in some cases a very effective way to transmit knowledge. And through technological breakthroughs, we are coming back to orality, which is remarkable if you think about it. Like we things just cycle back through the means of the technology, and that's truly remarkable and quite an irony if you think about it. So, for all these reasons, I'm having fairly positive view of Audiobook for what they represent. Actually, since the beginning of February, I've just finished one book and I'm attacking the second one, just because I'm listening to it. If I had to read them like I would normally do, it would maybe take 1 month and a half because you don't find that much time. And so you do get my point. It's a tremendously useful technology. It's a remarkable opportunity for us to promote ourselves, not only for Africans, but for the whole world. So we must leverage on it. And I think publishing houses young people that are entrepreneurs, even myself, I'm thinking about it, like read my work and put it on the internet, on a YouTube channel or anything like that. Maybe with you, for example. So that's basically my idea on that.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that with us. We can say that little by little, audiobooks are occupying the space, and then even writers are influenced. And we may say that there is truly a hope for that. But some are still doubting. They think that children books are like a periphery and seem like a marginalized genre compared to classical literature. So, Mr. Renaud, what's your point of view about that? Is it different from the classical literature? Is it truly a periphery, situated on the periphery and seen like a marginalized genre?
It's fairly
Promoting children's literature if it is already occupying the space.
there is some none of these challenges, but there are nuances that we maybe need to put when it comes to children literature in particular, because listen to an audiobook when you are an adult that already knows how to read and write. It's not necessarily the same thing as using an audiobook when you are a child. That is still maybe, like for very younger ones, learning to read and write. So this is not the same relationship with it. But there is another layer of that question, which is, what is literature really? Is it necessarily written for it to be considered literature? I don't truly think so. I'm not truly, but I don't completely think so. Even in the written realm, like written literature, children books may appear as a periphery because obviously they don't buy books. They don't make the bulk of the market. But the thing is, it's essential for children to read, and parents knows it. Parents know it, and parents will invest as much resources as possible if they are incentivized to do so. So I know it's not quite that it's a periphery, but by definition, it cannot represent the bulk of the market. In terms of audiobooks in particular, you have to. In my opinion, at least you have to know which category, which age group of children we are talking about. Are we talking about the kindergarteners? Are we talking about the 7, 8, 5, 8 years old? Are we talking about the 12, 30 years old, 13 years old? So it will be a different ball game. But even in that category, I still believe that listening to stories, it's a good thing for imagination. So it's still interesting to leverage on audiobooks for children. I do believe so, because it's not that different from what parents. Usually it's in Western cultures. When they read bedtime story to their children. Why do they do that? It's about putting them to sleep, yeah, but it's about stimulating their imagination. So it's basically the same thing. So I think there is a way there to instill a lot of new ideas and culture to children. And if you combine it with other formats, so maybe pictures will be following with the audiobooks, for example. If it comes in the kit, or if you should download it on internet, it can be interesting. So I think it's not a periphery per se, but it's by definition not the biggest part of what the market is. But it is very interesting, I think, to explore that, especially for people that that do have hard time to read.
Mhm. That's true. Of course, we're talking about promoting the children literature. It is one of the reasons I do agree with you, Mr. Renaud. We have to promote it, keep on working on it, especially in Africa, if you want it to be carried out, especially if we want this vision to be carried out, and it is very important. But on that, I would like to have the point of view of Mrs. Dadson. Do you think that children literature compared to classical literature is at the periphery, has nothing to do with classical literature? I'm talking about children literature at whole, as a whole thing.
Well, yeah, my own experience in learning to read and getting interested in books came from my mother, who was a writer, but also from being exposed to books very, very early. I think
Mhm,
the earlier a child is, exposed to literature, the earlier
mhm,
they appreciate, themselves, their culture, they understand where they come from and who the important thinkers and entertainers are. It's interesting. I agree with what Renaud was saying. Maybe our equivalent of reading bedtime stories, and my mother used to read to us quite extensively, but we also used to sit outside, when we go home to my grandmother in the village, we sit outside and listen to stories together. We have our own way of telling stories in Africa. It's a communal event. Someone will be telling stories. People would enjoy the stories, will, you know, get into it, sometimes respond. And so that whole culture of learning to tell stories, in the evenings together is no longer there. And audiobooks can provide a way of doing that because you're listening again, and it's an activity you can do in a group. One thing I love about audiobooks, you can do it individually, but you can also do it in a group. Put it down, book down with a speaker, a room full of people can listen and respond. So I think children's learning to love literature and books comes early. So children's literature is very, very, very important. It cannot be marginalized because that's where the love of reading comes. Um, I see also in Western book, I would say culture, um, the the gap between the reading abilities, of a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old has actually grown very, what the books that they consider the young adult books from, maybe early teens to adulthood are often very sophisticated, long books, much bigger. And I think it challenges readers to read more and to get more vocabulary and understand more. I think in Africa, we don't have a lot of books in that category. We go straight from baby readers and early readers, and then we jump to adult books. So there's not a lot of books in the young teenagers space, which is also very important. So in that sense, I don't know why children's books, yes, we have the picture books, the stories, and then we transition into, jump straight into adult books. So I think there's new writers emerging in that space for young teens or 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, up to, late and mid-teens. And audiobooks provide a way of enriching your vocabulary. I remember when I was a child and I was reading a book and I come to a word and I don't understand it. In my head, I'll say, how do you say this word? I have some idea of how that word is. But when I hear someone say the word, and it will think, oh, this is that word. Otherwise, if you're a child and you're reading and you come to a word you don't understand, you can just skip it.
Okay,
I like the
that's
way
true.
that's true. So I like the way where if you're being read aloud to or you're hearing a book read, you can
Mm-hmm.
expose yourself to vocabulary and dialogue. And we are coming from, we are a multicultural world, accents, dialects, words. How is it pronounced correctly? You know, when I was learning French, I had to listen to a lot of French in order to understand and to speak. So I think the role that audiobooks can play in listening and enriching your listening skills is very,
That's
very
true.
important.
That's true. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's true we're talking about children literature, but when it comes to African children literature, it seems like we are not in the mood as it might be. Because if we're talking about a comparison now, we're saying that the classical literature is overhead, and then we Africans, what are we doing? So we'll be holding on. I'll become me on another question in order to see what truly is the place that the audiobooks are occupying now. But before that, we would like to allow Mr. Christian Elonge. He's the leader of Formula Kalati Association. He's going to come over to share some information with us. After what, if you please, we can continue. Thank you. Mr. Christian, please.
Okay, thank you so much. And I hope our friends can hear me clearly. I just have some few input that I would like them to share on. The first element, the first question is directed to Mrs. Amma. So, Mrs. Amma, we would like to know what is the percentage of children books that you have converted in the audio format so far? How are people, how do you sense people interest, for African audio story? Do you have many requests to convert children books from, the printed format to the audio format, or most of the books that you are working on, are for adults? So how do you appreciate that balance according to what you have been doing so far, Mrs. Amma?
Thank you for that question. We originally started with actually adult books, books for adults. However, from the very beginning, my mother is actually a children's book writer. So I was very interested in the children's book space. I think that's the opportunity to add music, to add sound effects, to make the readings dramatic and exciting. So that opportunity was already there. So we initially started off with some adult books, but then we did a series of children's books where we added music, and it was multicast. It wasn't just one reader reading. All the different characters in the book had different voices, and those books were very, very, very exciting, especially with the music. There was one children's book publisher that we worked with, Afram Publications. They are one of the best known Ghanaian publishers, indigenous publishers, do a lot of children's books, and they were very encouraging in this aspect. I think the opportunities to do children's books, I mean, there are even more. All the parents who had the books loved them. The children loved them because of the music. And especially, last year and year before, because of COVID, during the time when, we're all out of school and schools were closed down, and the reading agenda for a lot of children was derailed. Listening to books really entertained the children and got them interested in books. So we do about 50-50. In fact, because of last year and the year before COVID, we've had a focus on children's books again, looking at how can we do books for young children and then also for students in the secondary schools. What literature books can we do? What about their plays, the poetry? So we are looking at curriculum aligned books. One of the things, in this part of the world is disposable income is not much. And so when you buy a book, you know, a lot of times parents who are buying the books want to buy a book which is curriculum aligned. And at least they know that this book that they're buying for their child is either useful in school. So the focus is also on kids' books, but we want to do all genres, you know. We want to do all genres.
Okay. So if you are clearly understanding, you focus more on academic or books that are aligned with the school curriculum, so that they'll have more interest for children and also for family, considering the fact that it is the parents who have the final say and they're looking for things that are useful both for learning but also aligned with the school curriculum for their children.
That is
Okay.
that is a new focus. I won't say our focus is to just get all books in all genres, science fiction, history, but we want books reading to be a delight, to be entertainment, to educate, to inform. So I won't say that we are doing books because we're just being realistic and knowing that in many parts of the world, to buy a book means that, you know, a parent has to find the value in it. And we realize that we school books, but we're not doing textbooks. We're doing books like literature, history, biographies, books that can, you know, respond to being in audio format. Yes.
And how do you make your book the audiobooks accessible? You know, because I believe that the issue of accessibility should also be something you may have in mind. So how can people have access to the books that are produced by your
Yes.
organization?
Thank you. So that we have a platform. Actually, our platform is internet based. And so we have an internet website. You can access the books that way. We also have 2 mobile apps. We recognize the fact that internet and data costs are high. However, we also want to protect the writers. You know, the writers' IP has to be protected. So right now we don't have like a CD or pen drive model. We make our books available on streaming audio. So there is a cost, but we're talking to telcos right now and we're hoping that by the end of this quarter, in this year, we can make an announcement about how people can read but not have to pay data costs for streaming, just by the price of a book. So we have the internet. We're using the internet. In schools, we're looking at how can we give a school, but in that case, then we give a school a catalog of books, and the school is responsible for making sure that only the students in the school have it, and it's not shared elsewhere. But offline solutions are possible, but then we work with the school and give the school access to a certain number of children and teachers, and that is it.
Okay, so it's currently possible to purchase audio story from your platform online using, I believe, mobile money services.
That's
Is
right.
it operational across country in Africa or only in Ghana?
Across all countries in Ghana and continent.
Wonderful.
Continent, yes. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Yes.
And have you ever thought about a mobile app where the story is like audible, like the story where the
We have an app as well. We also have Audiobooks. It's available on Android, Google Play Store. It's also available on Apple. So it's available, but interesting, it's more users come directly to the internet than download. Yeah, I was surprised. I realized that an app is not necessary because our website is internet enabled. If you go to it on a screen, it displays very nicely on a screen, phone. So you don't need to download the app. We have an app also.
Okay, so on the other side, we also have Mr. Ayi, who is an author and promoter of reading. So what will you consider honestly to be, the message that you would like to share across to those who, as IE, are producing or writing books? What should they do to make things easier for you? Amma, that's what I'm asking. Like, what
okay.
should?
Sorry, I thought you were asking
Yes,
Mr. I that
this is
question. Okay.
like it's like you are talking to author.
The
You
author.
know,
Oh, very good. Okay,
yes.
so
What
so
would they?
far, mhm,
What will you share to them so that they can make your work easier?
right. So when we are licensing rights from authors, sometimes we find it's a bit complicated because the author has given, he doesn't even know where the audiobook rights are. And sometimes they're with the publisher, and the publisher doesn't want to give them because they're not ready, they don't understand the digital space, and so they can delay in getting the audiobook right. So I would advise authors to keep their audiobook rights. Don't give them to your publisher. To keep them, because sometimes the publishers are not ready to exploit the rights and they'll be sitting on it and you can't move forward quickly. Then audiobook rights can be licensed in many ways. You can license them for a territory, a particular country, a geographical location, a particular platform. And so I would encourage writers to keep all the audiobook rights for themselves and then work with audiobook publishers. I will also encourage publishers to look at digital and to try to maybe convert some of their titles into audio to see how they do. You know, in all the big publishing houses in the West, in the US, they all have audio divisions. So Penguin Random House, they do audio, HarperCollins, they do audio, Simon and Schuster, you know, all the big 5 children's books companies and general trade back publishers, they have audio divisions. So I think we also should start, I would encourage publishers and authors to look at it, to try one of their titles. It may not, if they don't even want to try their current title, they can try a backlist, you know, an older title. Because when you launch it again as audio, it becomes like a new book. We are working on some books that authors wrote many years ago, but it is new in the audio format. So we have a, you know, a way of earning some new revenue. Also with the books, audiobooks, you get to know who is reading your book. In the print world, you don't really know. You give your books to bookshops and stuff. You don't know. But with audio and digital distribution, you can interact directly with your reader because we have social media sharing integrated in our app. If you've listened to a book and you like it, you can share it with your friend that, oh, I read this book and I listened to it and I like it. So all these opportunities are there. We want to make discoverability of African writers an important thing. We don't know. If we want to know who's writing children's books in Cameroon, who's writing romance in Tanzania, who's writing science fiction in Ghana, it's difficult. So we want to publishers to take advantage of digital to aid in the discoverability of writing. So my advice
Okay.
would be to exploit these other rights, audio, digital, ebook. I mean, less than 5% of African books are available in digital format, which is a big shame.
Wow. Okay, so basically you are advising author to mainly keep the audio right of their books when publishing it through a publisher. So, Mr. Ayi, what message, would you like to communicate across to Mrs. Ama and any of those who, eventually venture into the conversion of books from the printed format to the audio format? What do you think they should do to reach out more to author or to make your work easier?
Mm. Well, probably that would be, I think, maybe reaching out more to publishing houses. I would say because that's where the magic is happening so far when it comes to written literature. So I mean, it's not that much of a message, but it's I think it's more about the fact that things need to be done right now. Like we need to get to work, if I may may say that easily. And maybe audiobook promoters should make themselves much more known, because so far it's not that much, pervasive in the culture. So it is great time to promote, and maybe make islands ventures with publishing houses across the continent. That would be a great step, I think. Just like Miss Ama was saying right now, we are not quite aware so far of the intricacies, I would say, or the subtleties that comes along with audio format, even the legalities, like the rights, and even for myself, I must say some of my contracts, I'm not even sure if you mention audio rights in them, because my first book I've published it like 7 years ago. I think 7 years. Yeah, yes, roughly 7. And I'm not even sure that in the contract we specifically mention audio rights. Just to say that even in Togo so far we are not quite aware of this realm right now. And you have to understand that we came from a situation where internet was not that available. So it's only very recently that we are getting aware of this kind of possibilities with the fairly widespread internet and Wi-Fi and so on. Even myself, I have to admit, 3 or 4 years ago, with a friend of mine, with whom actually we have launched the initiative called Betty Books. He promoted Betty Books, which were supposed to be a micro Amazon, but in Togo for books, basically. And at that time, we were thinking about doing audio, like digital format of books, but the project never quite carried on. Just to say that we still need to learn more about it. And I think audio promoters and writers and traditional publishing houses need to meet. We need to meet at a crossroad and promote ourselves, and it can be tremendously productive and make African literature much more promoted. Writers and even publishers, like classical publishers, that would, I think, invest in audiobooks will pull some traction, from the massive promotion that audio can give them to their traditional books. So I think it's more about us meeting at the crossroad and collaborating much more than anything. So if I had something to say to Miss Ama, it will be maybe an invitation. So let's work together or something like that. So it will be mostly that, I think.
Okay, thank you. So let me bring the question across to Mrs. Ama. Are there existing partnership between your organization and probably network? For example, we have a network of African publishers. We have also Association of African Writers. We even have a Pan-African Power, a Pan-African Association of Writers in Africa. So basically, what is your approach? How do you ensure that the need to digitalize or to convert books from the printed format to the audio format is known? How do you reach out, to the writers community or to the publishing community? And do you have existing partnership, with them so that your work is being and so that you have more stories that will be, digitalized?
I've been, little by little. It's a huge challenge. The publishing industry in Africa is a big one. It's also very traditional. Africa is a huge continent, many countries, and so on. So I've been working sort of little by little approach, working with one publisher at a time who's interested, who sees the opportunities in digital. You might know about World Reader. So World Reader was the NGO that came to bring ebooks to Africa. They are the biggest operators in the digital reading space on the continent. And through partnerships with World Reader, who introduced me to some of the publishers who were doing ebooks. So I realized that, okay, these publishers are publishers who are already comfortable in the mobile space through ebooks. So I started with some of those. The Ghana Book Publishers Association, I'm a member now. At first, they didn't have members who were digital publishers. It is a category that is a new category. And I myself, I feel very new in the publishing world. I feel like a newbie, you know. The publishing world has been traditional for a long, long, long time. And we, the digital publishers, are seen as a little bit new in the space. So we're trying to work together. We're always open to work together with publishers. So it's a little, I'm an evangelist. I'm campaigning for the benefits of digital anywhere I can. I think it's a relationship where the publishers also have to put some money into it. It's a new market that we're developing, reading on phone. And we also have a lot of competition from the video, the streaming services, video, gaming, music, other entertainment that takes our children's attention on the phone. And so I think if reading is going to be an activity that we do on the phone, the publishers and the writers have to get on board, do some marketing campaigns, make the awareness there. So that's what I'm looking to do with a partnership with a telecom company, mobile telco company, to say, let's raise awareness. You can read when you are sitting on a bus in a trotro and the traffic is crazy, or you're going from Accra to Kumasi, you can read. You're in the kitchen, you can read. You're running, gymming in the gym, you're on the farm. But we need to have images, maybe visual images or advertisements that will show people these different scenarios. And I think the authors and the publishers have to put some money into growing the awareness. So I think there's a lot to be done in growing the awareness, but we are open to all the book publishers associations. I'm hoping next year to have a big, Ghana is the book capital of the world, Accra. And I'm hoping to have a lot of activities about reading outside, not reading necessarily the book. And those activities will grow the awareness, you know. And I think as the market grows and the writers begin to see that, oh, there's some revenue you can earn, I think the markets will grow.
Okay, thank you. And now we are going to look briefly at the financial aspect. Is it a self-sustaining business? Because the last Kalati talk that we had was about, the business model of literary initiative. You notice that there's generally some difficulties from those who are in the book industry to kind of make a living, especially entrepreneur. So is that also your case? What are the financial challenges that you are having, or you don't have any at all and your business is thriving?
No. I have huge financial challenges. You see, interesting, audiobook is actually a little bit more expensive than converting an ebook. Converting an ebook is very simple. You use some software, you run through, you get it, and you have a copy that you can sell or market. But on an audiobook, you have to pay, you have to license the book first, you have to get the studio, you have to get a narrator, you have to get the platform to put it on, and do the payment and everything. So really, it is expensive. And I'm at the stage where the writers and the publishers are not sure of the market, so they don't want to put up money up front. So far, we've been putting up money for the books in our collection. It is just last year that we started to have publishers who put money into the production. But even still, we're doing 50-50. At first, we used to publish everything upfront, but now we're telling the authors that if you want your book, let's share the cost 50-50. So we are not making revenue right now. Our numbers are still quite small, under 1,000, but we're hoping to expand and grow and get more readers involved and more listeners, more buyers, so that we can demonstrate that it is worth the market. But yes, for now, no, we're not making any money. And it's hard sometimes to persuade publishers and authors who are spending money on print to actually spend another money again on, audio. So we're still working that out. So I think it will take a couple of years to go.
Okay, thank you. Now, thank you for sharing. I believe we can all see that this is a challenge that is general in the book industry. Now, looking at Mr. Ai. Mr. Ai, how do you envision the future of the audiobook industry, and what are your key expectations, from that industry as an author and book promoter? How do you envision?
Well, I have a lot of expectation. I would say to this industry. I think that it will. I hope, or maybe we should think into, but or a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I do believe it will become much pervasive in the years to come. I envision much more promotion. I mean, I'm just repeating myself so far, but we need to embrace that technology at the highest level, I would say. And I'm thinking of publishers and even writers themselves combining as often as possible the textbook version with an audio version. Even in the why not? We were talking about the CD recently. Maybe instead of just the book, we will have the book and a CD version on it. Be it on the internet platform. I envision much more adoption of the audiobooks in the years to come, and I think we need to catch on with that train as quickly as possible and as enthusiastically as possible, so that we can be on set. Africa have a lot of challenges when it comes to promoting literature, knowledge, and so on and so on. So any mean is useful and is good enough. In that sense, I think there is big business opportunities or whatever for all of us. Obviously, challenges are many, but I think those that will control the platform in the beginning will reap a lot of benefits in the years to come. Probably it will go on as long as much as internet will be evolving and expanding. Why not imagine at some point parents, paying a very low, not so expensive, a very low forfeit for how do you say abonnement? How do you say? I don't know what is the equivalent. I'm losing my English.
The subscription?
Exactly, subscription. Subscription to maybe Audiobook platform, a monthly subscription, a yearly subscription of this kind of thing. I think the future is there. And the more we think about it, the more I feel the potential. There's a lot of challenges, but I think there is a huge potential for us, and we need to catch up with reality and the technology very, very, very quick.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll also give the floor to Mrs. Ama. Mrs. Ama, could you tell us what are the top 3 challenges that you are currently facing, in terms of priority in your business of producing audiobook? in terms of number one, number two, number three? What are the top challenges that you are currently facing?
Okay, so I think we are both content publisher and then we are distributors. So we have two business models going on. We have a platform and we have the catalog, the content. And so I think for me, one of my biggest challenges is balancing those two models. We have sorry, my video, yeah. Because we need the audio platform, because we want to have this niche platform for Black African books. Everybody knows where to find it. The platform is interesting because we don't want to put the books away on the Audible or Spotify or Kobo, these Western platforms where we can't access them. So we have to have the platform, but at the same time, we have to have make our books. So I think one of my challenges is balancing the two, because there's a lot of work to be done in making the books. And so we're trying to balance that. Then funding. Audiobooks are not cheap. So to produce more books, we are looking for funds, investment funds to build our catalog and expand our catalog. Those are, I think, our two biggest challenges. The third one would be, of course, the cost of data. So we're looking closely at how we can work with the telco companies to make sure that reading is an activity that is not, penalized, is not expensive. People should be able to read freely. And so we are challenging the telcos that, look, this activity of reading, you have to zero rate it. So if not, it's going to be difficult for people to afford it. So those are our top three challenges.
Okay, thank you so much. And now let's imagine that you have the Ministry of, you are at a forum where all the Ministry of Education or the government is there. What would be your three key expectation for those at the decision-making level? What is needed at the decision-making level to produce more audiobooks from Africa, or more African stories? What do you think is needed from the government or the decision-making body? The three key things.
So number one, I think the government talks about the use of ICTs, the use of technology in our learning environment from primary school, through tertiary education. And so the opportunities to bring technology into the classroom early can be done with books. And children are listening to audiobooks. They have a smart speaker in the classroom, and they can do interactive exercises and discussions. Like if you have an audiobook and you have an Alexa speaker, you can have a discussion about the book with Siri or Alexa or any of these voice assistants. And that is a way of giving children an opportunity to work with technology. At the moment, I think in Ghana schools, phones are not allowed, mobile devices are not allowed unless it's in the laboratory. I would challenge the ministries to start allowing children to bring phones and tablets into the classroom so they can access multimedia materials, so they can read and listen to books. So that's number one. How can we put the books into the classroom? Then also support for writers. How is the ministry supporting writers? Textbooks are a big focus of the ministry, but I think we have to go beyond textbooks to, trade books, reading books. Children need to know about our own culture, our own traditions, our other people across the continent. So if they don't allow and promote just reading general books in the classroom, then so I would encourage that every school has a reading list. Children are encouraged to read and get to know local writers So that's another very important thing. And I think the third thing, which is basically, it encompasses everything, is that, Africa has a future where we have so many young people, our population is growing so fast. When we're looking at our future and the future of work, what is it going to look like? Are we going to have an industrialized Africa where everybody will be working in industry? Not necessarily. So I think the challenge of looking at the creative digital economy, the knowledge economy, and trying to get young people who have the skills to be in that space is very important. And so if there's a commitment to growing the digital creative economy, this is an opportunity where every culture can have their input. In the universe of human knowledge, which is out there on the internet, we don't have enough, we're not represented properly. And so audio books, digital reading, digital literature, these are all forms in which we can make our own country and our continent, we can make our contributions, to this digital economy. Look at how the Koreans have come in and their K-pop, they had all these Korean music, Korean stories on video and so on. Nollywood, well, not Nollywood, the Indians brought their Indian culture, music, soap operas, and so on. In the same way, we have a lot of stories to tell. We should be able to equip our children, our young people with the skills so that they can also contribute in that space. So I think I would really encourage them that this is where we don't have the industry, we don't have all that, but we have the human, knowledge economy, and we can be players in that space. So I would encourage them to develop skills in our young people that can make them take their place in that space. Nigerians are doing it with music. Writers can also do the same, and we should encourage more of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Before giving the mic back to our main moderator, Mrs. Delali, I will just invite people who are following here directly to kind of post their question in the chat zone so that we can, share them with the panelists. There are other questions that we receive through the other platforms that will also be channeling to the various panelists. So I'm giving the floor back to Mrs. Delali. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. Dear followers, thank you for being with us. We're going to close up very soon. Thank you very much, Mr. Christian. Let me precise for you that Mr. Christian is the leader of the Muna Kalati Association. Thank you very much for giving more insight and giving more light on this topic through your questions. It is helping us in order to go deeper in the question in order to see what we can do more. Thank you very much, Mr. Christian. Then I would like to turn back to Mr. Ayi Renaud. I'm just wondering, is one of your books already converted into audio format? Hello?
Well, not yet. I have to say, not yet. It's still in the process. The challenge with audiobooks is that it's basically another beast. You need to find. When it comes to paper books, you have to correct them, edit, and all. So the industry is very clear. When it comes to audiobooks, it's different. You need different skills and different skill sets and different tools. You need a studio. You need somebody who read it. Would you read it yourself? So we are not there yet. Like I said, it's a huge opportunity. And the idea is there, and we are planning on it. I will be beginning with my very last book, poem collection, so Chant de Sable, in in French. So hopefully this year I will have my very first audiobook.
Okay, good.
Hopefully.
Sure. So tell us if you may express your interest, your deep interest among books, paper books, and then audiobooks. Which one would you prefer if you may express your interest? I know it is a tricky question.
It's very tricky because for us, a book is still a thing that we have in our hands. There is a very romantic relationship that we will have with a book. So it's complex. I will maybe take a joker there. I'll say that I would rather have still now a paper book. A paper book. The audio book is tremendously great. And actually, I do that for some books. I will have, the audio version playing in the background, and I will be reading it, scanning just the pages, and you will go fairly fast. So, frankly, I would rather have both. Both. One in my computer playing, and is the second one on my bookshelf, like lovely treasures. So yeah. It's actually a really great answer. It's a really great, oath to audiobooks, because putting audiobooks maybe at the same level, roughly, as paper book is. If you know anything about writers,
I do understand you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Renaud. We are okay with your decision, but I would like to come back to Mrs. Armour. And can you share with us some opportunities? Is there some opportunities to seize in 2022 with audiobooks? Is there any?
Yes, there are a lot. And I just want to respond to Renaud that we actually have a couple of beautiful Francophone narrators. And if you share your email with me, I'd like to send you some samples of their reading so you can listen. So we are happy to help you get your first audiobooks done, or even a sample that you can send out to teachers. There are a lot of opportunities. If a writer wants to share some information about their book, they can have a beautiful reading of a chapter or 5-minute, 10-minute excerpt, put it out there. One thing about audiobooks and digital books, they don't cannibalize the print sales. No. If anything, someone will hear something and say, oh, I want to go and get a book. So not to worry that it will cannibalize your print sales. And I've just seen a question on the chat, which I find a very, very interesting one from Joanna.
Yeah.
Interpreting and narrating audio in Africa, we come from a storytelling tradition. So it's quite interesting that we allow our narrators to as much dramatic license as they want, because we tend to be very dramatic about storytelling. That is our culture, that is our style. And so I find, in fact, it's very interesting because I've been listening to audiobooks for a long time. I first started listening to a lot of UK produced books. Then I listened to US produced books. My preference was for the UK produced books because they just tend to be more dramatic and more interesting. But it also told me that the way we tell our stories is also very different. And so a lot of Africans find.
That's true. We have many, many opportunities. That's true. This is that's true. So we convincing Mr. Ayi to follow the step, isn't it? So we have some questions from the public for you, Mrs. Amo. Is the AMA Association the original authors of the books in the narration? Is your association the original authors of the books in your narrations? It is a question from our public, from our followers. Hello.
It seems Amma has been disconnected.
I lost my
Yeah.
connection. I'm
Ah,
sorry.
Okay, she's back. She's back.
I'm back. My connection
sorry.
stopped.
Can
So
I take it again for you?
yes.
Yes, we have some questions from our followers. They would like to know if your association has the original, you are the original authors of the books in your narration. Is your association the owner of the original books?
No,
Um,
the question
no.
is rather is like basically what they probably asked was, are you associating the original authors of the book in the narration process, or the narration is done by other individual?
Okay. So to answer, and I'll answer both questions. So it depends. If the author has a beautiful voice and has the stamina and the time to come to the studio and will do the book themselves, yes, we encourage them to do it. But not for every kind of book. For biography, yes. Maybe for nonfiction, yes. But for a story, you have to have a real storyteller tell it. So we prefer a storyteller to do it. But if the author is willing, available, and has a good voice and can do it, we will encourage the writer themselves. But not every writer can read their own books very well.
That's good.
But the other
So,
question about do we use our own writing? No, we only do published works. Okay.
okay.
We are now looking at can we do some small short stories, original, that we can commission new stories that have never been printed before, that we can do audiobooks for. But for now, there's a lot of books that we want to convert. So we're using other works.
Thank you. Very impressive and interesting what you're doing. But you know, Mrs. Alma, uh, grandparents are known as uh, good storytellers. So the followers would like to know if you include them. Do you include them in the audio process? Do you include the grandparents? Do you integrate them in the narration of the audiobooks? As it is known in Africa that they are good at that.
So again, it really depends on the voice. You see, because audiobooks is the voice, and someone is going to be listening to your voice. If your voice is croaky or it's not good, it won't work. So if it's a grandmother with a fantastic voice, maybe an actor or actress who has kept their voice strong and full of energy and good, we will use them. If not, our voice actors are trained to, they can talk in the voice of an old woman or an old man. They can tell a story. But the second part of the question, folk tales, we love folk tales. And we're looking at how can we do some folk tales. But again, we are looking probably more at tales that have been written and they're being read, or getting someone who's very good at storytelling to record and then produce them like audio podcast, like storytelling podcasts. And in Ivory Coast, there's a very beautiful program that they have on television. They bring storytellers to come and tell stories I think once or twice a month. It's a Canal Plus initiative with one of the bookshops. And I've even contacted them to say, can you record those? They're so beautiful. Can we record them so people can them? And so we're talking to see if that collaboration can come. Very lovely.
Because we have many followers who like to know if you are planning to collect those old folk tales, old stories, like for you to preserve them for the next generation. You know, in Africa, we forget we the new generation, we are not in the mood.
That's true.
Though there are many, many stories and folk tales. So if you can also work on that in order to preserve it for the coming generation, that would be a great job. Thank you very much, Mrs. Amo. So today we have discussed, we have exchanged on a special topic we were talking about the place of audiobooks in the promotion of African literature, especially children literature. We have seen that there are many obstacles, but though in the same sense, we figure out that there are many opportunities, especially in 2022, whereby many schools are closed. So we have to think about going to audiobooks in order to help the new generation to be updated and to improve their reading activities. So I will try to come back to our chat and see if there were some questions for us. I think we have gone through all of them. So yes, the time for questions. We are in the session of questions. So if there are all other questions from our followers, don't hesitate. You can take the floor and present yourself and then state the question. I don't know if some followers are having some questions for our panelists. They will be pleased to answer them all for you. We are still in the questions session. So I don't know if Mr. Christian has some questions in delay. Isn't it? He can come over.
No,
but our time is almost at the end.
No, I don't have any question as of now. Just thank all of our panelists for sharing their expertise and knowledge with us. Yes, so I don't have any further question. I don't have any further question.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Christian. Today we were honored to receive Mrs. Amma Dadson. She is the CEO of Audiobooks. She's doing many amazing, great jobs in Ghana and Accra, across Africa and in Europe. And this evening, she has shared her experiences and activities with us. Mrs. Amma, thank you very much for accepting our invitation, though you were very busy. Thank you. Mr. Renaud Dossavi, he is a writer, a poet, and he has got many awards. Though he's busy, he has also accepted to take part in this discussion. Mr. Ayi Renaud, thank you very much for taking part in this discussion.
It is my utmost pleasure, and thanks for having me.
Okay, pleasure is mine. So, dear followers, all of you who are following us on Facebook, on Zoom here, and thank you very much for taking out your time to take part in this discussion, for sharing also your questions, your point of view with us. I don't know if our panelists has, if they have some words to place before we close up. Mrs. Amma?
Yes,
your last word?
Say,
your last word?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much. I just enjoyed sharing my experience. April is Poetry Month. You know, it's International Poetry Month. So, Renaud, I will be chasing you. We really want to do an interesting showcase of African poets. And poetry, of course, is best heard spoken. So I will chase you up because we would like to do a new poetry, just 10 minutes every day from a different poet around the continent. So I will be chasing you for some of your poetry, hopefully narrated by yourself. If not, we'll find narrators to narrate. So I look forward to that and to just sharing more of this wonderful African voices that we have with everyone. So you can access my, if you look for AKO Books, AKOO Books.net, you can find Audiobooks. So please come, everybody. I will contact Muna about a special package for you, so you can get a discount on our audiobooks. Any of the Muna Kalati listeners.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Alma. It is a great pleasure for us to have you. So, to the end of this Muna Kalati talk of this year, the first of this year, we would like to express our gratitude to Ms. Alma and Dossavi. Thank you very much for taking your time to discuss with us on this topic. Thank you. And to all of you followers around the world, thank you. And surely we shall meet for the next Mona Kalati talk, truly in this month again, with another topic. So till then, let's say goodbye.
Bye.
And
Thank
see you
you.
soon for participation. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye.